Hey everyone, patch 1.5 is right on the horizon, appearing at EVO 2024 this weekend at the Cygames Showcase, so I'd like to take a gamble as to what we might expect to see there for Granblue Fantasy vs Rising. And as a quick heads up, this video will mostly be focused on the various aspects of Ferry I'd like to see changed, because I think everyone already knows what system mechanics and characters need major fixes. So firstly, I did not play much of vanilla Granblue Fantasy vs. However, I do understand that a lot of the changes that occurred to her back then were intended to make her gameplay slightly less frustrating to deal with due to certain system mechanics, namely hard knockdowns off of most hits and being able to punish her for carelessly pressing buttons in neutral. A lot of the changes that occurred to her back then, unfortunately, don't make much sense in Rising and have left her feeling very helpless against the myriad of ways to force offense in this game, with Ferry being unable to reciprocate meaningfully. The intention of these suggested changes is not to buff everything at once, but to have each change be meaningful enough to stand on its own. I think the first thing we can talk about is the current state of GeeGee. GeeGee was nerfed a few times in vanilla with longer startup to provide more windows to punish lazy throws. However, with the transition into Rising and the removal of hard knockdowns, Ferry now has very few ways to actually enforce any kind of GeeGee pressure outside of her sweep, very cooldown expensive setups, or being forced to spend meter. Now, I feel that instead of changing how often Ferry is able to actually get GeeGee set play going in the current state of the game, I think the reward for doing so should be increased instead. We've already seen how frustrating Ferry could be when she was able to easily get GeeGee mix-ups going in vanilla, so I feel like that increasing the quality of the reward of the set play instead of the frequency of it will allow opponents to feel like they weren't just getting vortexed by GeeGee setups. Because GeeGee forces an air launch on hit, Ferry's reward off of her mix-up is actually really low as it forces an early combo limit. I'm aware that Ferry has completely unseeable high-low mix-ups that get around the guard button, but if you do guess correctly on the initial mix-up, then Ferry's lost her turn and is unable to enforce pressure again afterwards, outside of using close light and close heavy. So Ferry has to end her combo early and expend resources to force GeeGee mix-ups in most situations, with the reward for it not being amazing. The solution to one end of this problem, namely the reward for correctly landing the setup and then the mix-up, could potentially be remedied by allowing GeeGee to keep the opponent in whatever launch state they were in when GeeGee initially hit them. Within the current damage levels of the cast in Rising, namely Nier, Lancelot, Siegfried and Belial, all with their restands or combo tools that don't air launch, this would offer the opportunity for Ferry to get a few more hits in only once she's correctly guessed and forced you to be hit by GeeGee. You could change none of her damage numbers, but allowing her to actually get one or two more attacks in prior to launching you could prevent her damage off of resourced interactions being as pitiful as it currently is. This also does come with the caveat that having GeeGee keep an opponent grounded would unfortunately allow correct GeeGee hits to combo into sweep and then into another GeeGee Oki situation. However, you would have to be immediately ending your combo to sweep off of GeeGee just to try and guess correctly on the next GeeGee interaction. Another change I feel like is required would be one or two changes to her ultimate skills. Ferry currently has no way to achieve combos that give refundable ultimate skills outside of the corner other than off of her medium dispensed, which on its own is really hard to achieve, or off of GeeGee setups, which, as discussed before, cause your combo to be immediately cut short due to the combo limit. I cannot think of a very viable way to increase the combo ability of these moves other than speeding up the first active frames on them, but with the slowdown I feel like a lot of these tools could become very problematic when trying to actually put pressure onto Ferry. Another ultimate skill change I feel could increase Ferry's threat at the ranges she needs to be good at, mainly being mid to full screen, would be allowing her ultimate dispense to be reeled in for lower damage, but to allow Ferry to have the opponent put into a hard knockdown right in front of her and allow her to begin running GeeGee setups. This may have to be balanced with a shorter knockdown period, with Ferry being forced to commit to using heavy GeeGee to retain frame advantage in this situation. Otherwise, I could see this being overly punishing for Ferry's opponents by winning a fireball war with a near unbeatable full-screen Oki setup tool. Also, side games, please fix her ultimate Beppo. It's still the only true reversal that can be rolled through or low profiled. She doesn't deserve that. The last thing I would suggest would be to make changes to the way Ferry's install super interacts with the current game. Ferry has no safe guaranteed way to get her install off unless she already has GeeGee set up prior, and at this point in an interaction, if you have GeeGee set up, you don't need the install to force a mix. Brave Counter is such a detrimental system change to Ferry's install that it almost never sees use outside of particular last hit scenarios, and this isn't even counting the nerfs it got coming into Rising. The total duration was reduced from 10 seconds to 7 seconds, and during your install you now have a 20% damage penalty. So the total number of interactions you can force has gone down, and the damage you inflict when you guess correctly during the install is also severely reduced. With the current Brave Counter system, activating your install off of a blocked button will always leave you negative without GeeGee set up prior. You're negative for blocking the Brave Counter, and you're negative for spot dodging post Super Flash, so the only solution if you see the Brave Counter during the install freeze is to block and Brave Counter back. But with the install not contributing to your Brave Point economy, is this even worth it? And this isn't even talking about the lack of meter you have after installing, so if you happen to be hard knocked down from the Brave Counter, not only have you lost half of your install duration, you also have no meter to deal with any Oki that comes from your opponent after the hard knockdown. The first meaningful change I can think of that would be of a huge benefit to Ferry's install in the current landscape of Rising would be to allow her normals to inflict chip damage during her install. This would give Ferry a reason to use her install outside of point blank range, and because you're only able to cancel her normals into each other on hit or on block, but not on whiff, this would not create true checkmate chip scenarios unless Ferry brings herself into range to use far light or close buttons. They could definitely balance this by not allowing her install normals to chip kill, but still deal chip damage. The only other meaningful changes I can think of with Brave Counter in the current state it's in is to either allow the install to contribute to your Brave Point economy by providing an extra pip when used, or to remove any invulnerability from the move and allow it to be frame 1 or 2 activation so that it does not immediately lose to Brave Counter with very little counterplay other than Brave Countering back. At this point, we'll just have to wait and see what side games and Arxis think are the main issues with Ferry and how they plan on fixing them. There's a plethora of other changes I think could be made to Ferry to ease the struggle that this character is in the current state of the game, such as slightly buffing her 2L range, or offering her ways to enforce her pressure through better frame data, or even just flat out buffing her damage so that she can truly death by 1000 cuts you. We'll have to keep our eyes peeled and see what people find in the 1.5 preview patch at EVO, so here's to hoping Ferry can be good again.